And there we are. Welcome back, everybody. 9:15 Eastern on Monday night. It is September 16th. JB79 and I back again for episode 71 of the Leonis Report. Welcome to everybody in chat. I see a couple names here already saying hello and chatting there. Welcome to all of you on the stream, and welcome to all of you watching the stream in hindsight now that it's been recorded. And a special hello in particular to you, JB. What's going on, buddy? How you doing, man?
Doing pretty good. No complaints here. Kind of a standard fare Monday, work and family and dinner and all this stuff. So yeah, no nothing notable to report, I guess I should say. How about you? How was the weekend?
Same here, pretty low key. Had a little engagement party Friday night that I went to. Got a little toasty and had some fun with that, and then just kicked it on the couch and watched some football on Sunday. That was a very competitive Patriots game up until the end. I'll take it though. Unfortunately, it didn't come out with a win, but yeah,
Yeah, lost it on overtime, but yeah, it was they're playing better than I expected them to. They're at least competitive, so it's nice to see. I think we're pretty far off, but yeah, it's at least making for an entertaining watch at least at the minimum.
that's all I care about at this time. I'm at, we had our dynasty years. Now I'm just watching for the entertainment's sake. So uh,
Yeah,
that's
we've
what
had
I'm.
an embarrassment of riches when it comes to titles and championship teams and whatnot.
Absolutely have. What's on your gaming radar nowadays? What are you doing in your spare time over the past couple weeks?
Um, to be honest, I haven't outside of War Divisions and sort of Convallaria, I haven't been playing like much console games the last couple of weeks. I haven't had much extra time, but I do need to get back and finish Persona 3 Reload. Um,
Yes.
we talked about this before, but I'm pretty deep into that. I need to get back into a cadence and finish that off because I know I'm not very far from the end.
Yeah.
And then I have been wanting to check out the Star Wars Outlaws game.
Oh yeah.
Um, I've heard some mixed things about it, but I don't know. I kind of like the look of it, and so I'm willing to give it a shot.
I like it. I like it. Yeah, no, definitely finished Persona. I just recently picked up the new Visions of Mana game that Square released, and obviously timing coincidental with the Trials of Mana collab coming. I'm not very far yet. I'm like 2 hours in. It's a beautiful game, and I can tell the combat's going to be super fun. Like the combat actually looks really great. Man, that game feels like it was written for 12-year-olds though. Like the script in that game is really childish. Like it's really skin level. Uh it's almost tough to play through. Like I can only do it in spurts, but yeah, we'll see how it goes.
I mean, I kind of felt that way about the Mana series in general. It was always very very kind of simplistic, and I don't know. I mean, to be honest, I really only ever delved into Secret of Mana on the Super Nintendo, and at that time anyway, I was 12 or 13 or whatever. So, but even at that point, I don't think that I remember it being all that super compelling or felt like it was a mature type game. So,
No, same.
just what it is.
I maybe it's the voice acting. Something about this one though feels kitty like because I played Secret
Mm.
of Mana, love that game, and it you're right, it is very bare bones in terms of like script and but there were still like moments that would like really grab you, and this one is just like not at all. But we'll see.
I get you. I think there's a definite difference between like fun and whimsical and just like childish or simplistic like in tone.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
yeah, I get you.
No, but totally. But tonight couple topics to cover, but it is relatively light. We do not have an official news announcement yet in the notices, but we do have really strong confidence that Lilith is being released and her vision card is also being released this week. Fairly positive on that, where, they used to stagger those, and they still kind of do, but they often can release them within the same week too. So that's at least I think what I saw based off the Votive stats update, but maybe I'm misremembering or that was a error. Regardless, we're going to talk about it. We're going to have a little fun Kumbaya a curse vent session about Sephiroth and his impact still within the game. We were talking about this in Discord and think it's still fun to beat him up a little bit here while he's popular. I know we figured we could talk about Trials of Mana too, just in terms of like what maybe some of our plans are now that we also know more about Sodali and a little bit about Exia and really just like the timing of pack H's if you're going that route for things. But the big topic tonight, we are going to revisit our tier list update with some pretty large changes overall. And again, some quick hellos to those that just joined in the chat. Thank you so much for joining us here. Hisoka, see you there, buddy. But yeah, the tier list update's really going to be a fun one where obviously you and I tend to have to try to find a way to meet in the middle on many of these, and I have no doubt we're going to go through that whole exercise tonight. But yeah, anything before we get started you want to touch on?
I don't think so. I mean, just kind of touching on that point with like the double release week, historically, we've always kind of had 2 units, 2 vision cards over the course of the month, but this year in particular feels really, really crunched, where kind of the cadence of Road to Worldwide has really just become the normal. And it's it for JP as well because they've been getting the kind of dual releases. So, I mean, it is a 70 cost unit, so like the Viz spend is a little bit lighter. I I want to say there was maybe even like a 6K buy like the Ashen Warriors where
Oh,
I don't quote me on that, but at least I think I remember seeing people talk about it. But I guess we'll see if that comes. But that's potentially there as well.
yeah, it's funny. I don't have a strong opinion on the dual release or not because, on the one hand, obviously, yeah, that's a lot of viz to spend in a short period of time. No one feels good about that. But on the other hand, there have been numerous units that like I'll pull them and I'm like, dude, I love this unit. I want to use them now. I want to put them in arena, but I really need their vision card. And until that comes out, they're just not operating at peak. And so there's some weeks where I like it and some weeks I don't. So it's kind of flavor of the week.
I hear you. Yeah.
Yeah, but we will dive into Lilyth, who is a brand new 70 cost unit being added into the game. She is of the light element. She is part of the sword warrior class. I know some fans were hyped for this unit, but maybe had their expectations set in stone by what Ramada seemed to have come out with. They didn't even give her Lilith the 100 cost treatment though. They gave her the 70 cost treatment, which I know even there might have been some disappointed fans that they didn't go all out. I am a Lilith fan myself. I think if I had to like rank my top like favorite girls in the game, she is up there personally. Then again, I know lore wise she hasn't done much, so it's hard for me to make a compelling case why she should be this like uber busted unit, if you know what I mean.
What do you think about the redesign? It's a little bit thicker looking than the original
Oh
version, I
yeah,
think.
yeah, this is nice. This is nice. They good job with the armor. Honestly, I'm a sucker for the hair too. This is very like CTA esque in how they like made like the flowing red hair. Yeah, great art overall. This is definitely really cool.
Yeah, I like the design. I don't mind necessarily that it's a 70 cost unit. I'm a little bit puzzled why it's another 70 cost warrior unit, considering we just got Sunil for free, and because it's another 70 cost light unit, of which we have many at this point. So that is kind of the puzzling situation for me, where we have a lot of jobs and elements which don't have the 70 unit coverage yet, which it might have been nice to see that. Um, but let's actually talk about what she can do at this point.
Yeah, do you want to summarize? Do you want me to kick it off? I have a little spiel
Yeah.
if you want. Yeah. Oh, good.
S- So, I mean, she's really coming in as, in my opinion, an answer to Gilgamesh, where she is very anti-slash, very anti-magic, and that's kind of her deal. Like she's got the innate 50% barrier. She's got the slash attack debuffs that she can throw out as well. She does have re-raise, which is kind of the good one to have against Gilgamesh because if his follow-ups and things like that can very easily get rid of courage. And I think she's also got like the 50% absorbing attacks, um, which is good too. We've been seeing that on the majority of units at this point. I think pretty much everybody comes out with that these days. She does have like she's more of like a unit based attacker, so she's got the select twos that kind of fits well with like the warrior knight thing that has kind of been built up so far. She does have the dispel re-raise. So there's kind of like a couple of sprinkles of like anti Sephiroth in the kit as well. I think that re-raise is probably chief among them. She does have a pretty decent limit burst as well with the select two with the defense and spirit and peril, and that one is actually decreasing the slash penetration, which is quite nice because I think she can get like an actually a pretty decent amount of slash resistance if you like include her vision card, and
Yes.
she does have 20% innately. I
Yep.
think she might have a little bit on a passive as well you could potentially use.
Uh,
And that passive does have like a magical honeycomb passively, which is pretty nice.
Yep,
It's
I
like a
agree.
reduced honeycomb at the 5% per tile, but still pretty nice as a passive ability. Overall, I think that, like, it's an okay unit. Like, it's not the worst thing I've ever seen. And I think that she's actually like, if you're just going up against like a Gilgamesh or like magical slashers, not bad. Like she can kind of hang with that. I think that the problem is when you're coming into like the mixed damage parties where she's not nearly as good against um like the straight up magical damage or like the really heavy physical damage like a Sephiroth can deal out. And that's kind of the disconnect for this unit where some of the 70 costs that have come out in the past, you think about that have really like hit it off and been like perfect timing for the meta. They really nailed it with Lucio, where he came in and was like excellent against Elia and Soul, who were like the titans of that time. Or if you think about Raph, who was just she was like a hard hammer against Vivi and Helena and that combination of units. And this one was just is not good enough against the physical damage, in my opinion, that she is going to be, compelling against that Gilgaroth combo that we have right now.
Totally agree. Yeah, everything you talked about. She very much fits that stereotypical brawler archetype for me, where she is meant to lower enemy offenses via a variety of ways. And that's one of our, not complaints, but weaknesses that we've seen characters like this before. Tifa kind of comes to mind for me, where we talk about Tifa had a lot of different ways to like reduce AP in various ways and reduce like damage. But when it's something's too spread out, it often takes too long to materialize. There's too much that can change in the battle and never really comes to fruition. And so there are a couple good things. You pointed them out. One of them is the decreased slash attack of 40 for these two targets. That's enormous when you pair that with the decrease in slash res pen of 40%. Both of those excellent together. But she does also have the attack and magic breaks here too, of the 30% down for those. But again, that's three separate abilities. By the time you've gotten through three abilities, you've basically decided whether the fights are lost for the most part. And so to me, it doesn't have the real effect that I think people hope for. I am personally very confused on this unit in that I don't know what she really brings that doesn't exist in a couple other variety of ways. I do think you nailed it though that she is very much catered toward countering Gilgamesh, and you can even kind of see that in the TMR, where kind of like Winter Raft, this is very similar. That it's a teammate and self buff of 20 unit res, but the additional effect is magic killer down of 20, or human killer on magic attacks, which is Gilgamesh's follow up as well as Shrek's follow up at this point. But
Yep.
offensively, I'm not super hyped about her own damage. She does have a couple good things where she can increase her unit res pen of 30. That is a very nice way. That's similar to Shrek in terms of being able to rip through enemy unit res. Her own slash pen and defense pen levels are fine. They're adequate. They're not amazing, but she's got no AoE wide res removal. There is no protect removal here. I still think there's a variety of ways in which you can, mitigate some of her damage that it's very vanilla in my opinion. And just to really kind of like micro hone in on something here, I'm actually very confused about how they designed these two abilities, the unit res pen ability and this other select 200 or 120 ability. We don't often talk about this on the channel, but oftentimes in the past we would play with leveling up abilities to artificially change the modifiers so we could make the AI do certain things that we wanted them to do. This ability with the unit res pen, in my opinion, will always do more damage and always be prioritized by the AI as compared to this ability. Um, they're the same modifier. They're both select two. They're both height one. This one actually has the penetration on it, and it's actually two less AP, which is typically the tiebreaker for damage. So I'm a little confused in when she would ever use the 120 ability, because by all metrics and calculations, she literally never would, because this one is always going to theoretically do more damage, and even when the damage is tied, it's less AP. So there's a lot to this character that I feel like is kind of janky. That I'm not all that excited, quite frankly.
I mean, the single target resistance penetration is a buff for 3 turns, but to your point, even if she has buffed that on, it costs less AP. So I think the better design would have been to reverse those AP values and
Right.
then after leading off with that buff, she would then fall back to her job 25. So yeah, that's kind of a swing and a miss for me. I think the fact that she doesn't have 50% curse resistance is another big miss for me. We'll talk all about curse in a few minutes, but this being like she really needed to thread the needle and be like, if Gumi wants us to buy this unit, it needs to hit that meta right on the head, like they, you know, like I said a few minutes ago, like they have done in the past with some other recent 70 cost releases last year.
Mhm.
And unfortunately, like if it was just Gilgamesh who was the big threat, she'll be fine. And if you find those teams, I think that she'll be good. But yeah, I think that she will struggle a bit in the mixed damage teams. I will say though that one other thing that we had actually talked about in Discord before is she does have some on hit effects that will stack with the debuffs. So like
Yes.
she gets another 30 slash attack debuff that will bring it up to like a total of 70.
Yep.
And I think you would calc that out to be like a 20 to 25% damage reduction to those slash attackers,
Yep.
which is very significant.
It is.
Um,
There's also
but I mean, as
people
far as I've
freaking
seen
here.
in like
This is
correct,
the cipher effect where she can so
yeah,
that was also part of it where I saw some overlap with Cipher that I kind of just in my head was like, well, she's a sword warrior. Why is she doing the same thing that Cipher's already doing? Sunil came in and you could tell they were match made in heaven. She like removes protect, she removes AoE wide res, she sets up chains for him, and he kind of feeds off that. But there's a lot of overlap here in this class and this element that doesn't make a ton of sense to me.
yeah, it's almost like maybe you'd be looking to pair her with a Mont or a Cloud, or maybe they weren't necessarily looking at the Cipher connection. Although I think that they should be because that's a unit I think that needs that kind of bump to be a more compelling play in the meta. He's very good. I feel like he's just been missing that sort of top tier um, combo, to have with him. Cloud, I think, is great, but I don't know. Yeah, I feel like sometimes you might need a different look.
I agree. And the last point, just in terms of again how I kind of ballpark some of this as expectations, we have had two units that are very anti-slash in this last year, or at least perceived to be. And one of them is Oberyn the Auspicious, and the other one is the Veritas of the Fire. Now, the Veritas of the Fire unit actually is pretty darn decent that we've seen with his upgrades, and we'll talk about that in the tier list, I'm sure, soon. But I don't think either one of them I've played and been like, wow, they really shut down Slash. And so, based on the fact that I've already seen two units that very much go like in the 70s and higher on slash res and have all these things to diminish all the slash damage, the fact that they have underwhelmed me, I have really like no optimism for this, seeing that it's already failed two times where it looked really good on paper.
Yeah, that's the problem with these debuffers is that like we were saying earlier, like especially when their debuffs are coming across multiple attacks, it feels like it's almost too little too late by the time that the fight is get that turning point where it actually starts to matter. And especially if you are going up against Gilgaroth, if you are getting cursed or you know um something like that, that can completely snowball on you even if you do have the damage debuffs on there. And of
Agreed.
course when they die and get re-raised, I don't think all the debuffs necessarily are still there. I would have to check on these specific ones, but
I think they are.
um,
I
are they?
I
Okay.
think they are, but to your point, there is a unit right now that makes all of that absolutely useless. And go ahead, do all your debuffs, do all your damage, because when Summer Resnick heals them, dispel all debuffs for allies. So goodbye limit break effect, goodbye slash and peril. That's all gone on this limit break. So you'll have to do it all over again.
And I think that's well taken. I think that's probably her biggest problem right now is that yeah, even if she was better against Sephiroth and she was threading that needle, she does have Resnick to deal with as well, and I don't think she's going to be winning that war of attrition.
No, I agree. But we won't spend a ton of extra time. We do have her weapon. I'll be honest, this is a very underwhelming weapon for me. 8 AoE resistance. We've seen this stat mean far less as of late. And although every little bit is cool, the amount of AoE res pen makes this stat not mean as much. The AB consumption is nice. The reaction block rate of 30 is fine, but as a slash unit, she needs way more than that because all these counters have been way overtuned for like their proc chance against slash damage. So while this is cool, it's still only 10% more than what you get on the Truststone passive. It obviously does free up that Truststone slot, but this weapon also doesn't really do her any favors, where I think some weapons can elevate some units and give them a certain niche. I don't think this one does it.
So in her case, she has 35 debuff weakening innately.
Mm-hmm. It's pretty good.
So yeah, like, so she has I think 15 area resistance. This gets her to 23. Add in a vision card, 43, maybe a buff on there as well, 60. So if you have like if she could have access to a debuff weakening card at that point to kind of push this up over the edge, I think that maybe then we're talking in terms of area resistance. I don't think that Warrior does. Let me just double
It
check.
might not. And I'll be honest, I'm not even necessarily thinking of the crushes, which I think is the angle you're going with the debuffs. I'm thinking
Yeah.
more of the AoE penetration, where Cloud, Sephiroth, and even the visions of Mana characters, they've taken a little twist and they've given them a lot of AoE pen, not AoE crush. And so thinking of Cloud and Seph and now these two future units, that's kind of the angle I'm coming at with the AoE res. But you're right, the debuff weakening angle does significantly hedge that stat against the crush imperil.
Yeah.
But
So like overall take, like I'm actually probably going to skip this unit
me too.
unless like there's some, amazing, low cost banner. I'll do like a 300 paid ticket or something. That's kind of where I'll stop. I do want to get her though, like in the long run. I think that she'd be fun, at least to play in limited. But I think that's limited cost modes is probably going to be the pinnacle for this unit, at least for now.
I would agree, and we'll keep this brief because I think that the tier list and everything else we want to talk about is worth it too. This vision card, can we see it? Okay, yeah, 1 second. There we go. This vision card, I think is an easy skip for most people. There are 4 jobs on here. It's bow, ninja blade, greatsword, and sword warrior, and 2 of those you can already basically wipe off in terms of value as it pertains to this card. Bow and ninja blade are Bow doesn't get much out of this card, and Ninja Blade is non-existent. This one, the primary stat is the 42 slash attack, which is a exceptionally high amount. 16 magic wide res. You could make the case that this is a main slot vision card if you were to conceptually use the magic wide res as your AoE res main slot card, and makes a lot of sense when we're talking about Gilgamesh in terms of AoE wide res. So it's not the worst card, but we also know that's 20 slash res is also decently penetrated. I just don't love this card. I think if I'm picking my 3 main slot cards, I think I can think of 3 better ones than this for that group.
Yeah, it's not like a slam dunk, I would say. I could see it being useful in some builds, and certainly like for a unit like Seifer, it could be like an interesting one to have, is because he's a little bit weaker against units like Gilgamesh and some of the magic based ones. So I do like the base stats on it. I think are another kind of nice thing about it. Some dex and some agility. The bestowed is nice too. But yeah, I think yeah, you can probably skip this one in most cases.
Yep. It's not awful, but it's yeah, not a must.
Yeah.
But I think that's all we wanted to cover for Lilith. I think we captured that pretty well in 23 minutes, which does kind of segue to the next conversation topic about Curse, which you brought up earlier, where I will kind of highlight this again in terms of overall pick rate and utilization. Sephiroth is still in very much in the meta, not only in global but even on JP, and he's still hovering at that like 60% plus pick rate. Now things have gotten a little bit better, and what you guys are seeing here is global utilization on defense in the top 10. Sephiroth is at 68% of all defensive teams, and even in JP, even though they've had some small meta shakeups in terms of what's being used, overall he is still let me filter this. He's still relatively similar. He's at 60% here, and so despite what they've done to introduce some balance, and there actually have been some good things to start creeping in, he's still at a way above average pick rate. And there's a lot of things that he does well. And it's not just Curse, but we'll talk about why I think that's some of the most frustrating. But we talk about the AoE coverage removal. There's the remove buffs on hit. There's the amount of AoE pen and the Dispel Wide Res on his main ability with the extra 40 defense pen. So there's really nothing you can do to like really mitigate that damage other than protect. He also obviously has something else. Oh, Berserk, Sleep, other status effects there. So there's a lot there that is still super compelling, even without the curse. He's got the all element and peril on that same limit break. There's a lot there, but we focused on curse. Do you want me to give you the soapbox first as to what your frustration is there? Because I know I'll follow up.
Yeah, I'll start it off because it was kind of kicked off by my venting in Discord earlier. But at this point, I'm tired of this unit being holding all the other units back. Basically we're beholden against this unit because no matter what you're running, you have to be thinking about this unit and what he brings to the table. And it starts with curse. And although at this point, we've been dealing with them for 3 months, we know at least some ways we can deal with it, at least partially. At best, though, like unless you're running the aura, you're probably like missing it maybe 30 to 40% of the time. So even if you're doing like a 30 faith with a 25% trust stone. So at this point, it's just so long overdue to me that they haven't taken that low hanging fruit to push him down a little bit. And the easy thing to do would be to release a piece of equipment that has 50% resistance, and at that point it significantly diminishes his effect with that limit burst. Which at the end of the day, it's directly impacting a lot of other units' ability to get into the meta. The Jooms of the world, the Ramadas of the world, and all these other units that even if they have like a 10% natural resistance, it's not enough. Like
Right.
there's enough RNG there that it makes it you question whether you want to run them as like a daily driver. So I don't know. It's even with the mana collaboration, they didn't go all into that, and I was disappointed with the Trials of Reckoning item being again just a 25% resistance. We're not getting significant amount of raid equipment in the game at this point that in the past had been another way that they had dealt with these. So I don't know what they're waiting for because this unit is impacting what they're able to release and sell in the game because of his presence. So
I completely agree. Right, and that was my suggestion with you on that topic was the raid item. We've only done 2 raid items all year. I see no reason why you couldn't just release one with 50% curse rest because it's not just Sephiroth. Ramada also has curse in her, and even Ice Veritas has curse rest. Now his is at 25%, although it might be elevated. I can't remember, but regardless,
he
this
gets
is
up to 40%.
yeah, it's not just Sephiroth. It is still a game mechanic that can be frustrating that they have obviously put other places. And to me, it's as simple as that. That way, at least you give widespread access. It also diminishes how heavily reliant you maybe have to be on a unit like Resnick. It also gives you Esper flexibility, where right now we're using Orochi on a lot of people just because we really need that curse resistance. And you're running characters like unoptimally for this one stupid thing. And the way I've kind of like tried to process of elimination identify that I think that's what it is because all the things that are in his kit, although they're all very strong and even together they're strong, they're not things that have ever really like broken the game before. The on hit dispel effect, dude, Ed Elric had that, Faris had that, Lucio the Luminous has it. It's a great ability. It's not broken. We've seen it be really powerful, but it's fine. The AoE courage removal, there's plenty of units that have AoE courage removal abilities. Or even in the strike follow-up meta that we were in, that was effectively a courage removal meta because of how much follow-up damage is being done to just knock that 1 HP away. Even the amount of penetration and wide res removal, we've seen characters come into the game that have moved the damage power creep forward with some of these. He's really no different there. He's doing something similar, but it comes down to curse that's such a debilitating effect that completely neuters it. Not only does it completely eradicate an entire class of units and the supports in the game, that it makes them completely useless, but it fundamentally kills what so many units have in their kit for like how they literally just survive on the battlefield. That not even talking about that, but the fact that it nullifies re-raise inherently too. That's like the extra benefit of it. Not even talking about that portion, but it's such a game-changing mechanic because so many units have had heal backs built into their kits or have any kind of external healing that it's, to your point, holding back a bunch of characters, and it's so debilitating. The other stuff you can play around. It's been in the game. We've found ways around it, but Curse, you have three options around it, and none of them are slam dunks. Even Resnick is not a slam dunk because, as you've seen, there's problems with her spacing where she stands still too long. Oh, maybe there's a height two difference that now she's out of range of the aura. Oh, there's always something that it's still not there, and it's so dumb that they haven't. It's gone on for 4 months. How long has it been out? It's been forever, and 60% plus in that entire time is ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, he came out at the beginning of June, so it's 3.5 months roughly that he's
Yeah,
been in global.
yeah.
But it's longer in JP. Like, it's not going to change in the next month. We just looked ahead at it, and JP is still the number one unit overall being used on both sides of the ball, so attack and defense. It's you just can't let that happen as the developer of the game. They're asleep at the wheel once again, and it's I don't know. To me, that's the lowest hanging fruit with this unit. He's still such a good unit. Even if you completely take that away, his LB is still a 20% in peril on a range 6. And with him, that's going to be a dispel on top of it. He's got the like you mentioned, the courage removal, the healing capability. Um, he's an amazing unit even without it. So just please get it out of the game yesterday. It needs to go.
Completely agreed. But that does bring us to the Trials of Mana portion here, where we have seen what they plan on releasing. We've seen the character kits. Now we've seen the Trial of Reckoning item. We've seen the vision cards. We have some comfort around a little bit of the JP testing, where I know the initial feedback that JP had, they weren't in Guild War at the time, so a lot of the results were based on Arena and Free Match and Limited Guild War, which does skew some of the end results and how competitive they can be. I'll be honest. I know for me, I overall think that the Trials of Mana collab is likely better than what some people think it is. It's not amazing. It's not game breaking. I do think these are still high quality competitive units, though. I unfortunately think they are still at the mercy of Sephiroth, as we just mentioned. That he is a big factor in it. But there's other characters that influence them. Like, it's not just Sephiroth. They obviously have to still compete with Shrek and Gilgamesh and Sadly now coming out. So it's not just Sephiroth. I like some of the vision cards. They're not all slam dunks, but what about you? Do you have any plans, like who you definitely want to pull for? What do you think about the collab overall? This is more just an open discussion.
So Duran is a free unit, free 100 cost unit. My plan is to throw him in the barracks on day one as soon as I get him from his free summon, and he's going to sit there until whenever. So he's going to be a shard battery for me. I'll get him to 99 and through the chocobo and whatever freebies that they hand out. I don't really plan on spending much, if any, Visior to build him up because I don't see any super compelling reason to use him right away. He's within the Knight group, which is still kind of under construction. The best unit within Knight, who is Mont, is in a diminished state right now because of Shrek. So he's a nice piece. I think that he is worth building, but I just like I said, I don't see any compelling reason to put a bunch of resources into him. Angela, I think, is not a must-have unit either. I don't think it's a slam dunk, but I do like what she brings to the table, especially now that we know that the next unit is also going to be a devout in Exia. So I can see that being maybe a potential. We don't know what Exia is going to do, or we know partially what she's going to do, but we don't know enough about her to really comment on it fully. But that could be a compelling combo, these two units. And by the time we have Angela, we will know more about Exia. So
Yep.
it's something that we can revisit that conversation. But she does have at least the 10% curse resistance innately. I would rather it be 50%, but 10%, or I'm sorry, she doesn't have the 10%.
You know what
Never
I think you're
mind.
thinking of? I think it's the vision card. The vision card she comes
That,
with has the curse res on it.
that's yeah, I'm thinking you're right. One of the visions cards has the 25% curse
Oh,
res.
but this is
Or
attack stat. This is not hers. So I'm sorry. I take that back. Her vision card does not have the curse res on it. It's the Duran vision card that does.
yeah,
That
I
stinks.
conflated the two. It's Duran, I think, who has the 10%, and then the vision card gets him up to 25%. I think that's what I was thinking of.
Got it.
Anyway, she's like another bruiser, like 50% heal back units. She's a debuffer as well. She's not a big damage dealer, and that's kind of where people have been disappointed with her, I think, in JP. She's not going to come out and blow people away. So I think that's where, potentially, depending on what Exia is able to do, maybe they can work in tandem very well. If Exia does bring like the big damage potential, and uh, Angela here is bringing like the magic reduction dispels and some of the key things that are going to set her up. So that's kind of where I see this unit right now.
Yeah, I agree. I Duran for me is like you said, a battery for Mind Spheres. That's how I did Tifa. I didn't build my Tifa. It was only for Mind Spheres. I don't see how you can run him without Shrek next to him, which is a decent team, but I don't like any third units in that combo. I don't like the idea of mono wind only for him. But he's a solid unit, just not a quick to build. And I do like Angela. She's the kind of unit that I look at and I go, there's some copium here. I think one of the more underrated things in her kit, it's translated improperly here on Votive Stats. She can actually dispel absorb damage done, um, which is crazy to me. That's effectively curse for many units, where a lot of units rely on their damage absorption. We haven't seen as many heal back effects as of late. The trend has definitely gone more toward damage absorption. So if you can dispel that on a unit, this is low key really valuable and like neutering the enemy effective HP. Her damage, I agree, is a little wonky because she's not the typical like spirit pen kind of unit. She really doesn't have access to great spirit pen at all. This passive you see here is not one of her favorite passives you'll likely be running. And so from that angle, sure, kind of a step back, but she does have it on a buff, so you could maybe counter that way. But to me, it's the AoE pen. That's what I was trying to talk about earlier. Like, I think this is a really interesting angle because they did give her, hold on a second here. I think it was 40 up to 70 AoE res pen. I could be misremembering, but regardless, whatever it is, they've done a couple unique things to make sure she can still do her damage. She comes with some good utility with the AoE courage removal, the entire reduced counter chance of 100%. I do like this mid-fight buff of the reduced damage, physical damage, because there still is no way in game to remove this yet. So being able to get this mid-fight, I think is still really cool. She does still have capabilities to get rid of most magic mitigation. This is both removal of shell and magic damage. We talk about Gilgamesh like having that on his diamond. She's got 2 out of the 3 right here, and she technically also has the AoE wide res on this other separate ability. So I think it's one of
Yeah.
those ones that I'm like, I can see the bones, but maybe a little spread too thin, as we were talking about on a lot of abilities. But the Staff Devout is certainly interesting. I'm particularly interested in her as a dark unit to help Cypher, as you mentioned, where I haven't really thought much about their overlap per se, but dark is really hurting for units. And trying to think of where she fits into the picture there. Um, we haven't talked about Crimson Wizard yet, who I know is next, but I like her.
Yeah, the other thing is like there's an untranslated passive that she has that has several effects, and that is giving her basically like a clutch factor, I would call it, where if one of her teammates dies, even if they get re-raised back or full life back, she will get this buff, which is kind of nice. But it's a 20% increase in magic damage, and then I believe it's either 20 or 25% reduced physical or and magical damage taken. So she just gets like a huge steroid there. That could totally win and clutch fights for you, which I do like that. And it's a very nice passive, even if you don't consider that additional effect anyway. Like 15 wide res and 12% agility, you'd probably be taking that 9 times out of 10. Um, so they did actually hook her up quite a bit with the Trials of Reckoning item, where that actually gave her one of her big weaknesses, like you said, was the lack of spirit penetration. And this does fix that in a big way because it basically gives her an on hit 20 spirit and peril uh, p-
Oh,
prior to the damage. So
very nice. I like that.
assuming that she's topped up in her HP. So
That's a goodie. Well, yeah, and she
yeah.
got the 20 healing power as part of this, so she will absorb more because of it. Uh,
No, that one is Duran's effect.
I'm sorry, thank you. It's the top 3 here that are the universal. Thank you. I'm sorry, guys.
Yep.
Yep. Yeah, no, goody, goody, goody. And we'll keep moving here because there's still some more to cover. I know Crimson Wizard. I know you're on the fence about him because I think his big thing is how much 100% hit chance he has that you can basically gear him not worrying about the accuracy angle. I think the impression I've gotten from hearing you talk is that you're still on the edge of your seat waiting for that evade unit to drop with some of that nullify sure hit, because I think that's the angle I've seen you take to try to diminish how valuable this can be. But this to me looks like a unit that's just like straight damage. There's very little utility in this kit. I mean, there's not nothing. There's some, but this is like a unit that's just like I'm gonna blow you up.
Yeah, he's got like the 30 spirit in peril, which is nice because there's not really much spirit at all in the game right now. And then he's got the barrier break on the cross AoE. That's kind of the only utility really that he has. He's quite bulky though. I will give him that. He's got the again, he's like another absorb HP unit, I if I remember correctly. He's got the protect and shell, the area resistance, the the wide resistance in there as well. Um, maybe it's one of his attacks that heals him back up then if he
Maybe it's
doesn't
this
have the
one.
actual.
Yeah, if he's
Yeah,
below
yeah.
a certain HP threshold, he will heal himself. Yeah.
And then the job 25 as well as the absorb attack.
Yes. Thank you. Yep. Yep. Yep.
So yeah, he's got a couple attacks that heals himself in the mid fights. And then he's just got like some nice bulk to him. And he's just like a magic bruiser essentially. But yeah, big damage potential, especially when you combo him with Sottily, who's kind of got a lot of the utility that he's missing, and then they kind of complement each other nicely in that way. He's also like a big chainer too. He's got some chaining attacks, which it's really unless you kind of are those are going to be more relevant, I think, if you're pairing him with Sephiroth because he'll only chain on the elemental type.
Yep.
Um, but yeah, I can definitely. I mean, there's still no Joom is not going to be able to be quite as good against him because he can, I think, reduce. Does he reduce the magic reduction, or is it Sottily that does it for him? I can't quite remember.
Sottily does it. I believe that Sottily removes the magic reduction.
Okay,
Pretty sure.
so yeah, I guess if Joom is facing him alone, I think maybe
Oh no.
that
He removes the magic reduction. Where is
he
it? It's
does.
it's here somewhere. Uh, we'll find it. Pretty sure it's him. Oh well, whatever.
Yeah, the there's a lot to unpack there, but
Oh no, it is Sottily. There we go. Sorry.
yeah, I knew it
Okay.
was one of the two that does that. He man, Sottily gets rid of Shell too. It's going to be hard to go up against these guys. Um, I think that he's a solid unit. I think that with Exia coming, that's kind of where I started to pause on him. Obviously, there's still we still need to see if she's actually good because that's obviously gonna make or break his what people do with this guy. But if she is good and it looks like she's going to be equally as good with Sottily, I can see that kind of being maybe the next combo that people gravitate towards, thus making Fire a little bit harder to play. And going back to that conversation of Sephiroth and kind of his stranglehold on the game, Gumi has kind of a vested interest in diminishing Fire right now over the next few months. So that's where I pause a little bit on this unit personally.
Yeah, I would agree. And I'll be honest, if Sottily wasn't coming out, I wouldn't think twice about this unit. This unit's like PvE only for chaining, because obviously the quest hollow effect on this card too is part of it. But Sottily made me think twice, where they obviously complement each other so well. And you throw in the fact that he can be multi-dimensional with being a fire unit in what fire has, but to your counterpoint, water is around. But I also made this point. I don't believe in that as hard as lately in terms of elements counting other elements, because we've seen this year alone that can often not be the case, where Sephiroth comes out and then Gilgamesh comes out, who should be weak and dead on arrival, but it's not. He works perfectly. And then you get Shrek, who should be dead on arrival because you have Gilgamesh, and she's not. She's great. There's I've seen that kind of bucking the trend, so I'm trying to be open minded about that. But yeah, this is just like a really hard hitting unit. My personal pull priority, I'll attempt to go for Crimson Wizard only because I do want to go for Sottily, and the vision cards are so expensive. I want all the vision cards. Angela's going to be a pipe dream for me if I can get her. I would like her, but it's going to come down to when the pack H timing drops also. So we'll see what happens. Not to mention Exia and all the future stuff that is always on the table too.
I mean, he certainly is going to be able to blow up Gilgamesh. Like that goes without saying. I mean, just look how much damage Soul does against him.
Right.
So If people do end up pulling for this guy on mass, Gilgamesh is not going to be around too much longer.
Not at all, not at all. But lots to look forward to there. I think that's basically what we wanted to talk about with the Trials of Mana Collab, just to give an idea of where our opinions lie, strengths and weaknesses. Still more to come in terms of what we see from the JP side of things. But for now, we're thinking stash Duran, maybe pull Angela if your account's set for it, maybe. Crimson Wizard even then is a pass too, and his vision card I don't love as a must pull either. It's a solid sub slot vision card, but not a must pull vision card either. And other than that, Sottily looks to be great, and see what else comes. But we can move on to the tier list here now, which I think everyone should have some fun watching us. Now we have not done the tier list since July, and I'll share my screen again here. Hopefully, you guys can see this pretty well. End of July, we did the tier list. We had tentatively placed Shrek in the S tier. That's where we left off. She had not come out yet, but was coming that week. We knew she was going to be amazing, so that was our preliminary guess. And so, one of the things that, as over time, we've tried to come to stomach and accept is that we needed to just remove some units from this list. And we did last time. We did a pretty good job removing an entire tier, and you had created this cost tier of units that still have a consideration because of their cost alone, but trying to be more realistic that, hey, listen, guys, if this unit's an E, a D, they might as well be an F. Like they're so close to each other. You're really splitting hairs at that point, considering the gap between them and the top end of the game. And so this one is kind of no exception. We looked at our D tier list, and this isn't a reflection to say that these characters are never usable, don't have a time and place, but for strictly like tier list purposes, these are units that I don't even want to say niche because they don't even get the time of day in certain gameplay that we really needed to cull D. And so this D tier at the moment, anyone with an arrow, we have decided to remove from the tier list. And so I'll give everyone a moment to pause to look at this because there are some names that you'll probably be very surprised to see drop off entirely. I'm sure many of you look at Starlight Elena and think it's unheard of to remove her from a tier list. I'm sure even Skahal as a unit has been so good for so long, seeing him removed. Even units like, King Mont and Alphonse Elric, who are staunchly decent tanks. They're not awful, but man, you just really can't do much to them at the moment. I think that's the time where we have to be realistic. So, is there any unit here that you want to talk about that was a tough decision, or one that you think absolutely had to go, or I don't know, anything?
So, so kind of I just taking a step back
Mm,
before I answer that. The
sorry.
the kind of the part of the impetus for this was that the tiers above them, we don't have the ability to be as granular because we have all of these sort of, I won't even call, like you said, we won't even call them niche units at this point because they're just too far gone. Like the farther and farther we get from the 4.5 year anniversary, the harder and harder it is to look at these units and think that they're a compelling play, even despite maybe getting, decent upgrades on a few of them. So we just have to, at this point, wipe away even the ones that we thought were worth keeping the last time that we did this, so that we are able to be a bit more granular with the top end of the list. Um, but just kind of to your question, a couple of them, like Kepka, comes to mind immediately because obviously he's only just over a year old, and Fire has been so great right now. That's it's Fire is as good right now as it's ever been in the game, probably, since day one. So the fact that you can't really put him in a team convincingly, I think that says enough about that, where that unit is right now. So, how about you? Is there any that were kind of tough for you to push down?
King Mont was for me because I think I've seen him still be so effective in a variety of ways that he's got so many cool toggles you can play with, and that Berserk Limit Break is still proven to be really good. But I just really haven't seen him used anywhere enough to be a compelling case. He was really the one that I thought was difficult to move down, but everyone
I
else,
think
yeah,
I think with him, like once the meta flipped back to magic, like it's really hard to play him right now. Like Shrek absolutely dominates him.
oh yeah,
He was actually very good for a little while during that great sword research and like the fist,
yep.
look, sort of physical meta very early this year, where we played him a little bit with Lucio and Bartz and things like that. But yeah, keep going.
No, that's virtually it. Everyone else, I think, had a compelling case. The one thing I feel like, just so we don't waste any more time, like setting the framework, the last thing I want to say here is that, as always, for all of you guys watching, at the end of the day, if these units are working for you where you are, I'm really happy to hear that. I'll never deny the results you guys are seeing. When we do these tier lists, it's an analysis of being objective and realistic to people that have all the vision cards available to them. It's playing against units that are reincarnated. It's playing against some of the smartest players in the world that know exactly which toggles should be on or off. It's those that have access to reliquary weapons that maybe where you playing don't have. So there's a lot of factors that when we do this analysis, it's not to diminish or discount things that you guys are seeing. If you hit top 1,000 arena and you're using Hyo, I think Godslayer might have pointed out, I'm really glad to hear that. But in like an objective analysis, we have to make some hard decisions on where people land. And so that's kind of the spirit of this, is taking a harder look at that and being a little more quantitative in our, you know, thoughts.
Yep,
Yeah.
definitely.
So we'll call D here. Everyone say goodbye to all these units. The arrow, we are going to whoop, take them right off here. And a couple of these other units here, we are going to tentatively
And
move.
then
Oh, go ahead.
I'm just laughing because I did actually end up saving Kefka there.
Did you?
That's my copium, I guess. I
Should,
kept him on the list.
all right, all right. We'll hold him for now. He's not taking up that much space.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah, a couple of these units have had some limit break upgrades, so that's part of the discussion theoretically. If we wanted to go up or down, we'll try to move this quickly. But I know part of it too was also preliminarily moving down other units too. That
Yeah.
with the space freed up by the D tier, what other unit should also drop down. And so I'm going to go ahead and start moving some of these down. We'll kind of rapid fire these because I do want to take some time to really sift through the S, A, and B tiers to really add some thoughts there. But, you know, Winged Stern at this point, unfortunately, has, he's just fallen in compared to his durability. The re-raise removal is too easily dispelled. Even Flagbearer Glaciella here, you know, the AoE res monster that she once was is not nearly as compelling anymore. And while still an excellent unit, quite frankly, even Spear has shown that it's not hitting the ceiling it could, and she's not a top tier Spear player if you were trying to upend the meta. She's still very good. That's why we're not taking her off, but not the unit she used to be. Yuffie, kind of the same idea here. Accuracy power creep has gotten to the spot that even with her null sure hit, there are some units that can still come close to hitting her pretty regularly, and her overall damage is not what it used to be either, particularly because the type of teams she's in, you're not getting all those same slash chains, and she's relatively squishy, all things considered. So you land one hit, and things aren't really looking good. I know for
I
Perrine,
think I think her problem is also that her class just has gotten zero development since she came out, basically. That
yeah,
was kind of when she came out, there was only maybe a couple cards since then that have and haven't really done anything to elevate it. So it's also kind of a game balance thing.
I would agree. Perrine was another unit that, you know, got a really, really bad limit break upgrade, and Strike overall has kind of fallen. And she, as part of that, even through this entire water meta that we went through, Ice tended to be the edge, not other water units. And the water units that did creep in were the Pharises and the Elves of the world. Perrine was kind of the odd girl left out. So still a solid unit, but not hyper competitive like she used to be. And then the last one that we thought for sure was Zidane, where this is a unit that I had a lot of copium for. Good lord, did I? Because there's a lot to like about him. But this dude just dies in 2 hits, and I can't do anything to stop it, and just never achieved what he could have, and solidly in D tier for me.
Yeah, I mean, he still has like some unique things to his kit, to this day, like the courage nullification, or sorry, the courage seal, and then like the CT canceling. If he can cancel the enemy CT effects.
Yeah.
So those are still good, but I think similar to Yuffie, the dagger group also has not gotten much development. No units have come in to partner him up with since he came out. So yeah, that's a he just basically got buried immediately.
Agreed. And although these units got limit break upgrades, Summer Jaden's still in D, and even then, hanging on by a thread, he's still a tough sell. Same thing for what's her name?
Cronwell.
Thank you, Brownwell, and even Hyo. This is the copium of all copiums. I've not seen Hyo do well in any capacity. Very much a niche player in some kind of like anti ice team, I guess. But he woefully underperformed in the Great Sword meta all things considered, and that was his time to shine. Um,
Yeah.
if you want, do you want to keep going and moving units down, or should I pause here and do some of the sideways arrows? We can talk through them.
We had talked about like pushing Bart's, Ferris, and Lightning down as well.
Yes, this was tough. Do you want me to talk about Bart? Do you talk about the others?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, start with Bart's.
I was so we initially did not move Bart's down, and this the tough thing for me was Bart's and Wing Stern have always been tied at the hip. Very rarely do you see a team with Bart's that Wing Stern isn't in. And so if to me if Stern was going down, it's pretty damning that Bart's is also going down. When you also consider the fact that there's an abundance of follow-up removal at this point in the game where that was really his time to shine. So the fact that not only have they gotten rid of his niche, but even his overall partners that you've paired him with are all kind of trending down. Also, he to me had to go down to the D tier list. Real quick,
Yeah,
I'm sorry. Oh,
that that was it for me. Was Resnick coming to the game and kind of taking away that follow up?
Logi just asked. He wanted us to clarify what puts a unit in C versus D. Genuinely, it's really just a judgment call on whether we think these units are a little bit competitive versus like niche arena plays. It's really just a judgment call of overall power level. It's not more in depth than that.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I think D, you're like basically hanging on by a thread where maybe you can see some play in arena or maybe like limited events or things like that. B and C are as you kind of go up the list is basically your viability level in top end play.
Yeah. Um, Yeah, and I'm sorry. So who said Lightning? This unit did well for a while with Joom in the meta. Now that Joom has subsided, Lightning isn't nearly as good. And for me, Ferris actually was a drop for me. And for me, one of the things with Ferris is that as an AoE monster, that same idea, she's gotten progressively worse in terms of mitigations. She can't survive to unit res at all. And where she formerly was a really solid unit with her roll compression, with how much healing she could pump out, the amount of A, new gen supports that exist, B, the amount of units that have self-contained healing in their kits, which mean they don't need Ferris as much, and C, Curse. May all those things make her far more valuable than she used to be.
Yeah, unfortunately, like so many units having the AoE crush has really killed her main source of survivability. We just went through, a red mage meta with Glassy and Gilgamesh, and Ferris. We tried it. Like she was okay. Like it wasn't the worst we ever seen, but not now that that meta is fading away a little bit. She's gotta move down in kind.
Definitely. Now, a couple of these other units have these sideways arrows on them. Do you want to address them now? Not only in C, but also in D. I know Oberon and Fire Veritas uh, lingering here.
Yeah,
I'm fine keeping Fire Oberon in D. He's close, though. He's not great. Um, but if units
yeah.
like Hio and Wing Stern are here, then Fire Oberon should be here. He's comparable. I actually want to bump up Fire Veritas though. As much
I think
as much as two
I think
tiers potentially.
he's at least a C, if not a B for me.
I'm gonna keep him in B just for the moment. We'll talk through that soon. But actually, let me keep the arrow on him just so I know that we revisit
I
that.
think that he's probably like on the line between B and C, but the fact that we get the reincarnation and the Veritas accessory,
Exactly.
that's kind of giving them that little bump. Plus, like the timing for him is pretty decent. Shrek definitely hurts him quite substantially. I'm not gonna beat around the bush with that, but if you're still finding like the Sephiroth Gilgamesh teams or heavy ice teams, like he's excellent against those.
I would agree. Um, these other ones. I'm cool keeping Raph here. Shells is debatable. Her limit break isn't nearly as good as it used to be because of how easily curse can be removed and how easily her buffs are dispelled. That's purely a Sephiroth thing, quite frankly. But I know we really don't see her other than some cost limited stuff, but she's still good support. I'm on the fence about leaving her here, moving her down, or putting her in the cost bucket.
Why don't we throw her down into cost for now? Because we're mainly only seeing her coming out during limited at this point.
I agree.
Other She's occasionally on teams, but not like she was.
No, well, and if they do, they lose to the higher tiers here. That's kind of
Yeah.
remember that's like our barometer at the end of the day. How competitive can they be? Ice Jaden, fuck man, this is
I think his upgrades were good enough that on like kit caliber, like I think he should stay,
I agree.
but it's not a good time to play him right now.
No, 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 no.
Although like with like the wind resistance and unit resistance, to be honest, I haven't tried him against Shrek, but he could probably do well enough.
Right. Even with that magic resistance, the amount of wind res he has could be decent. Um,
Yeah.
Vivi, I almost want to move down, quite frankly. I know that sounds weird. He is not aged well for me with the amount of AoE resistance and AoE wide res where he can do nothing with that. The limit break was really his saving grace for a long time, but I think the synergy that made him shine is virtually gone. And even now, looking at him, like what he brings from like teammate buff perspective, it's still fine, but I've not seen a good VV in quite some time.
I've seen some people trying to play him like with Shrek and with you know, some of the black mage stuff that's been going on. It's not as good as it was. I think when I look at some of the units in D, is probably of a similar caliber. Probably better than some, but you know, on the same tier than some too. So I think that's fine.
Uh, Wind Veritas, I don't mind keeping here, quite frankly. I still think this is a really solid unit with a lot of good things from his Dispel, the AoE Shred. It's not amazing, but I think he's better. I see him more viable than I think a lot of the units in the D tier.
I think these Pierce units are waiting for something to elevate that group, and we'll talk about Ramen in a bit, but she's not good enough to elevate them to a whole tier at this point. So yeah, I think C, like, you know, average or good is where you should be.
I agree. And Earth Veritas, I don't mind keeping in C either. He's not amazing, but he's not awful. This is a relatively solid tank in the new age of things. It's kind of like the spear units. There's just really not a need for him right now. Shrek is doing a really good job, and the impending magic meta in keeping him at bay. But he's a very bulky, sturdy unit that can be a good rainbow tank for a variety of teams. That I think he's got enough versatility, kind of similar to Raph. That I'm like, they both have kind of similar auras with that like 25% damage down. It's dicey, but I think it's comparable.
So somebody in the chat was just saying Win Veritas is better than Flag Glassy. Where do you? So
Uh,
obviously we rated her better here, so that's kind of our opinion. But what do you think of that?
yeah, we rated him better than her here. And I do agree with that. Him being an armor user alone, I think, is a big step up. The armors have scaled really well within power creep of the game. She does not have access to that. And although she has a great utility on that like courage move and the accuracy she brings, I do like what he brings for like the on hit dispel, the AoE crush and penetrations. I still think there's more in his kit that does well in the modern state of the game, and he's a little more self sufficient with some of his buffs that I think he stands up the test of time just slightly better. It's a small gap, but it's I think there.
Yeah, I think it's just the modern utility. He's got like the wide resistance, the haste, the barrier, all in one buff. It's just superior to what Glassy has. There are some things that Glassy does better. Like she's innately more accurate. She has obviously the debuff weakening and the area resistance. So there's still some good things about her. I think also like the Veritas's targeting patterns are generally better and more flexible too. So that's another thing that I like about him.
Yep.
But you know, they're not that far apart, to be honest with you.
I agree. And I don't know if I want to belabor any points on the rest of these units. To me, Melnia is like a fringe C. She could be in D, but there are still times where she pops. Um, I don't have a strong opinion. I wouldn't mind moving her down, but I don't mind keeping her either.
I think she kind of lives and dies by the re-raise dispel from a long range, where sometimes you can sneak that in and be cheeky with it, and it can work well. That's without that, she's really nothing at all.
Agreed. A unit like Fang, honestly, for me, I same thing. I don't mind moving in D if we really felt like it. I don't think she's significantly better than Flagbearer Glaciella. She's still really good, but the results are very streaky with my Fang. It's not nearly an amazing play. But any thoughts for her? Because I think the rest of them.
Fang, I think, is got more damage potential just because of her. She's really the only Pierce unit that has like significant amount of Pierce res penetration, and then she's got like the nice Pierce and Perils
You're right.
as well.
You're right.
So that I think that for what she's trying to do, I think that's keeps her where she is.
I agree. And then I would keep Velas here. Velas's big thing is the double haste, but there's so much haste removal in the game at the moment. Obviously, curse being everywhere. There's healing power down. He's still solid, but there's no reason to move him up. I've seen some people have good results to him in the comments, but I think he's solidly in the C tier, considering the limitations of what the S and A tier bring.
Yeah, I think that's fine.
Yep.
Good spot for him.
Which then brings us to moving down some of these other units. So Astrius, Greatsword Astrius, definitely down. This unit has absolutely fallen off a cliff for a variety of reasons. Agility reasons, his buff rotation's weird. You got to do stuff with the bow tie with him. It's just not in a good spot for him. I'm happy with that. I'm gonna skip Volk. I'm gonna come back to him. Ice Howlet, I agree. Uh, Fine unit, not a compelling play though. Has a lot of weaknesses. Tifa, same idea. Not a bad unit, just not very compelling. With the top end of the game, doesn't do much to really compete.
So
Squall.
I just
Oh,
want to
good.
I just want to say a couple of things on Asterisk because I'm sure that might um, ring some bells for people. But for me, I think Asterisk was buoyed by Greatsword, both offensively and defensively, right? Because offensively, Greatsword was the best when, several months ago when he was being played at a high rate. And then Jum was like the Sephiroth of her. She was like 70, 80% pick rates. He was one of the best units to use up against her. So now that both of those things have started to fade away, he's not as compelling of a play. He also relies on courage, which Sephiroth just nukes him, and he's loses his courage, loses his magic survivability along with it. So yeah, tough time to play him right now.
Absolutely. And moving along here, Squall, we've always had Copium for, it still has not come to fruition. He's still a fine unit, but probably cut above some of the slashers in D, but even then, it's not by a ton. He's to me benefiting from the fact that he's one of the few good units in his Sword Knight class. I think if he was in a different sword class, he'd probably not be as valuable. Just from that niche.
Yeah.
Um, Water Veritas, not awful as far as Veritas units go. She's got her time and place. It's just not all that consistent. Even in a slightly magic oriented meta at the moment, she still has some limitations. It's not that bad, quite frankly, but more on the side of niche. You don't see her used prevalently in a lot of water teams, which is probably the first unit you drop in that team if something else comes along. So I like that.
I think where I've struggled with her is like she is heavily reliant on the magical barrier, and it's only 3 hits, and she doesn't have any seal for it. So, especially when you're going up against these follow-up units where they'll hit you and then nuke you with the follow-up attack, maybe then Gilgamesh hits you with a second follow-up attack after Shrek hits you. Your barrier is already gone that, in one play basically. So, that is where she's really struggled at the moment. Whereas if it was like a turn-based thing, or maybe if it just had that one extra hit, she would have been maybe a little bit more viable right now. I still think she's okay. Like you said, she can still do quite a bit of damage to Sephiroth. So yeah.
Yeah. I want to push back on Volk going down. I still am a Volk believer. In particular because Fire is still in a good spot. I think Pierce is still in a half decent spot with Ramada. The thing with him that still I appreciate is the fact that he comes with the Dispel Seal, but his AoE wide res actually has held up half decently, even though it can be dispelled. He's got enough innately that yes, there are certain times that his re-raise can get removed pretty easily by units like Shrek, so he is a little bit feast or famine, but I think he's more compelling of a play than Raph or Earth Veritas is. For that reason, I do want to keep him a cut above, but it's not stellar. But it's good. It's you can throw him in and he'll look like he can play. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I hear you. I don't have any convincing pushback to it. So yeah, I think B's good.
I am comfortable leaving Fire Veritas here for now. I think given the other units here, I think with Fire Veritas, to your point, a lot of things keeping him up with the accessory as well as the reincarnations. He's got a little bit of a niche, but it is a damn good niche and good timing. So at the time of this, I think he's done well, and we've seen some JP usage where he's done well. I am fine keeping Helena here, quite frankly. Her re-race steal is one of the few consistent ones. Her reflect is still nice versus Shreka. She's not amazing, but there have been a few arena teams. I haven't seen her in Guild Wars, but a couple arena teams where I thought it was a slam dunk victory and it wasn't.
Yeah, I think for her, like it depends on if she's in the line of fire or not, like especially against like the physical damage dealers or Gilgamesh in particular, where they can nuke her down very quickly. She can hold up decently well, like if Shrek is the main carry on the end, and there's not really much else, because Shrek can't dispel her magical reduction, and she's got very high unit resistance. So like even if Shrek is penetrating 50%, she is still blocking like 30 to 40% of the damage, which is significant. Um, I think that she is hanging on by a thread though. Like
Yeah.
she doesn't have like a convincing case for B, but I think like she is buoyed a little bit by Shrek right now, and I think it's enough that B is okay. On that same token, A2, like I would, if Shrek wasn't here right now, I would probably say that she belongs in C, just because of the Sephiroth factor. But I think that she is good enough against Shrek that um, she can hold her spot. But again, hanging by a thread, she's really surprised me at how well she holds up against her. Obviously, it makes sense, right? Because she's not human based. That's a big thing on like the follow-up attacks.
Yes.
She's an android unit. She's got the massive magic resistance and she's ice. So if Sephiroth wasn't there or wasn't so good, or like especially with the curse, because like physically she can hold up decently against Sephiroth, especially if you have glassy. It's just that the curse is really like if you catch that, then she's just done. But she has surprised me, so I just wanted to say that.
Yeah. And the last unit here, who Eld, who had a little bit of a resurgence in our guild in terms of us using him with honestly pretty good results. There is absolutely a limitation and a ceiling to how well he can do, particularly against Sephiroth if he gets cursed. Rinse and repeat, same old shit for all his units. But he's actually done pretty well, all things considered. He's at least viable with all of these other units in the B tier. We've very comfortably gotten 3 stars against the meta teams, and even comfortably gotten 6 stars against some of those fringe top 10 teams with him. There have been fights where he's been really bad for me, and then there's been fights where he's actually like been the key clutch guy for me, like that limit break AoE CT up. All of a sudden, you're lapping everybody. Dude comes with a 20% damage increase around him. Ramada's nuking people with that extra damage. There's a lot of things there that still hold up well for him. Honeycomb barrier only dispellable by Shrek at this time, that I think he's
Yeah.
comfortably in the B for me.
Yeah, and obviously he's got the elemental advantage over Sephiroth too. So he is threading the needle, just a bit. His damage feels pretty bad, I think, and when you think about all the wide res that he can't get around, and the honeycomb obviously that Shrek has. So sometimes it feels like he should be doing a lot more damage than he does, but he certainly can tank the damage like nobody's business. He's still very, very tanky. So he's still good enough for B, I think.
I agree. Which brings us to the A tier, and I'll start with Soul, who had a really strong time in the sun with Gilgamesh at its peak, where he was one of the few units that could destroy Gilgamesh, and did really good versus Summer Glassy too, pre her upgrades, where she got some of that extra like unit res and magic damage reduction. Soul has fallen a bit though. I still think he's solidly a B. I think as far as magic units go, he's also gotten Espers with the unit res pen and the magic res pen that do help his damage a little bit. He's gotten Orochi, the fire Esper, which does have the curse res and the fire attack. So there's been some game balance things that I think bode well for him, that I think I'm comfortable with him here too.
Yeah, I mean, we saw him deleting Gilgamesh there for for a while. So yeah, he absolutely was in the dumpster a couple months ago and was brought back. So you like to see it because we don't really have many of those stories you can point to these days.
Nope. And Brian, and those no, you don't see Summer Resnick yet. On the left side of the screen are their icons. We'll place them at the end once we've kind of got our tier list together, but they're coming. We'll move things here. We're at an hour and 13, so we'll kind of speed things just to make sure we can adequately talk about the S and A tiers. Oldoa definitely down, obviously in conjunction with Sephiroth and his uptick. There's enough barrier breakers around too at the moment. Cypher and Ramada and others, that even her barrier doesn't hold up as well. She's a courage unit. She's still pretty solid, but she really was more of an anti-strike niche, and there's just really not as much of a need for that. Still good with the staff black mage teams, but kind of like Volke, there are some times where she just gets destroyed, and there's other times where it looks okay. But I think B is okay.
So this is where like where she was probably overrated on the last time that we viewed it, but because we weren't able to be as granular because of some of the other units, kind of down below, this is a change that probably should have been there before. But she still is actually, I would say, better now than the last time we talked about her because of Shrek coming in. Very, very tanky against Shrek and can do actually considerable damage against her. Obviously, has the super high unit resistance, and the passive re-raise removal is actually can be very sneaky against Sephiroth
Yes.
if you kind of time the plays right. So I have seen like very compelling teams with her and Shrek together, kind of giving Shrek the re-raise removal on the limit burst, which allows her to one tap Sephiroth. So that's pretty strong.
It's a goodie. What about Dario? Is he in the same category as Aldoa for you? Because I have mixed feelings on it. I've tried Dario. I'm usually
Uh,
underwhelmed.
yeah, I think that he belongs where same with Aldoa. Also very, very, I think he's better than the last time we talked about him too. Like I think that he was probably overrated last time. Um, because now Shrek is here, that's a compelling combo with with not only with the wind cards, but also the Katana Black Mage cards. And so there's actually quite a bit of synergy there with the VV card and Great Demon and a couple of others. So obviously you can put Sephiroth in that team to kind of help against the ice threat as well. So yeah, I think B is a good spot for him.
Yeah, he's been good anti-magic wise for the team, but I've noticed him dying relatively easy, and Shrek's re-raise removal for him easily gets rid of that re-raise remove. And even if he's not cursed, the amount of healing power down in the game, that's really his form of sustenance, is that triple hit where he can heal back a little bit. I've noticed the healing power down really nuking that. So his survivability is not nearly to par where I was hoping, given kind of the magic meta. It's fine. He B is respectable. That means you can still play. It's just not really all that reliable.
I think for him, he's falling into that territory where you really don't want to go against Shrek with Gilgamesh because you know Gilgamesh is just going to cleave through that team and take him down relatively quickly. If you can find those teams that maybe are just Sephiroth with Shrek, and maybe that's a little bit more compelling for him and kind of guarding your team. But like you said, to your point, the curse is kind of looming large over the game, as we talked about earlier.
Definitely. Anyone else in A that you think should be up or down? That was all the arrows we had. Or are you
I
comfortable with
don't
this?
the so Fina and Luciel are I think they're good. I think they're okay there. For me, the next ones to fall down from A, I'd probably be looking at Kadaj and Mont. I
Yes.
don't know if I'm there yet.
Same.
Mont, I'd probably be closer just because of the meta conditions, even though I think his kit is still excellent. But those, I think they're closest to falling down for me.
I would agree. Kadaj is doing well though, just because of how much fire there is, and he's still very accurate. Katana class, obviously, the meta conditions are keeping him up. I'm comfortable keeping them here. We'll move on to then S then. And Summer Glaciella, we kind of voted to move down. She's still superb, but the magic meta has neutered her a little bit. And even prior to that, there were times where we saw her go like just almost one tapped by Cloud's Limit Burst. The amount of courage removal in the game can still like remove that crutch for her. Curse obviously can kill her too, same shit. But still exceptionally good. But we've seen it on a downtick.
Yeah, there's been some additions like Gilgamesh obviously hurt her quite a bit. Luciel was a big one with the innate courage removal, the water resistance and that stuff. And now Shrek coming in as like another like primo magic threat hurts her quite a bit too.
And Shrek obviously staying in S. I think this is pretty comfortable. These three units in S, which then leads us to adding to some of these units. And we will kick things off with Summer Resnick, who I think you can comfortably put in S as well. She is a meta contender with all three of these units in every iteration you could think of. Does a bunch of utility for all of them, and countering all of them in various ways. No doubt S tier unit.
And I think at this point she is probably top of the list for obviously like she doesn't have the damage potential there, but I think that her utility that she's bringing is going to be lasting a long time here. I think that she's going to be in S for quite a while.
The barrier seal alone is like kind of awesome. Like people forget about that, but we look at the aura, but That in
It's
itself,
crazy.
yeah,
It's the
very.
best thing about her.
Yep. Sunil next. This to me, I'm gonna go B purely on the fact that Halloween Lucio is in B. These are units that are feast or famine on their hit rates. If you can hit them, they're not lasting long. They both have similar buffs with the barrier. They both have similar enough evasion rates. Lucio has a little bit more utility than she does. She's more damage oriented, and she probably doesn't have as many teams that she's good in as him because Earth has a lot more variance where he shines. She's got limitations, but I think she's where he is. It's kind of where I see it.
Yeah, and I think that for me, she gets bonus points for not only being free, but free max reincarnation. So you can really amplify her main source of survivability, which is the evasion, by reincarnating her for free, getting the 35 to 40 additional evasion.
Yeah. Just fun fact tangent. I'm sorry. We're going late. I have used Sunil in free match for a month straight. I've been using her, Cypher, and Addison Ray with the nullify sure hit, and I'm at like a 95% win rate. It's fucking amazing. When you can give her nullify sure hit, no one can hit. She's well over 700 luck, well over like 130 evasion. It is genuinely a fun sight to see. But
That's awesome.
without Addison, that does not happen. Ramada, maybe a controversial one. I mean, I have to go A. I don't think there's any way around that. Definitely not S, and definitely not B. I think that's solidly
Yeah.
an A tier.
Yeah, I think that's right now when I look at A tier, I think the best units in this list are Cypher, Cloud, Ramada, and Joom are probably like my top four right now, like in terms of the DPS. Um, yeah, I think she's way too good to be in B tier at this point, but we've seen her limitations. We've been playing her every day since
Every
she
day.
came out. And she doesn't quite have enough to make it into S right now.
Yep. Lightning Veritas, I'm unsure of. I would be comfortable putting her in B or C personally. A little too early.
I, yeah, we still don't know the full extent of her kit yet, so I'd say put her in C with the other Veritas units for now.
Yeah,
I
it's
think that she could be good at some point, but yeah, it's still kind of needs to come to fruition.
which brings us to the probably divisive Lilith, which obviously we don't know real time yet. We're probably making a prediction on. I'll be honest, my gut, I'm probably putting Lilith in C. And my basis of reasoning for that is if Lucio the Luminous is in B, he is a tier above her to me. Same with Eld
Mm.
when you talk about bulk and like potential damage. Same thing with like who's the other unit here? A2, bulk and damage. To put her and see her next to A2 and Lucio and Eld uh would feel a little weird to me, but that might be a little harsh. Like
Yeah, it's
she seems very Squall esque. That's a good comparison for me. Bulky brawly unit who's supposed to do a lot of damage that diminishes enemy attack power, but it just doesn't come together.
she's definitely borderline. Like I can see her like in the right circumstances, maybe being tier, but I just need to see it first, I think, before I could firmly and convince myself for that. So yeah, I think C is probably good for now. We can revisit it next time.
Got it. So again, our goal at the end of the day with this is we do not want to be more than one tier off. Obviously, there's always going to be debates on matchups and this and that. I think for me, the most controversial ones at the moment, if I were looking at this, is King Mott in the A tier. I think there's an argument to be made that he goes down, just given Shrek and Gilgamesh. Even with Gilgamesh, he was already gone even before Shrek came in. She was really just the dagger that did it. I think 2P is also debatable though. She's okay, but she's not on the same power level as Elia for me. She's still okay. Like there's the follow up removal. There's a lot more accuracy in the game. AoE crush this doesn't mean as much with the. Actually, can we move her to C? I'm convincing myself right now. 2P down to C.
I'm okay. I'm okay with her in C because I think that the main thing for her was her evasion,
Right.
and yeah, the accuracy power creep has been substantial. So
Yeah. Other than that,
Elia still has like the amazing utility, and we do know that her limit burst upgrade is coming probably next week.
yes.
So I don't want to move her down and then move her back up immediately because her limit burst upgrade is actually we'll talk about it next week, but it's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah. Anything else? We'll obviously give chat a moment here to kind of digest it, and feel free to shout out if you think someone is egregiously off. I think to me this looks okay though. Anything to you stand out as too high or too low?
There's definitely some units that I'm like they're borderline, right? Or like they're in danger of falling down. Like in the B tier, we talked about it. Like Helena, we already talked about is on her way down. I think Lucio is on her way. Is Lucio and um shoot, who else? I lost my train of thought now that you're moving everybody
Oh
around.
shoot, I'm sorry.
Both Lucios, I think, are in danger of moving down.
I agree.
But I don't know if they're there quite yet. Especially Lucio is going to be getting some key upgrades here probably in about 3 or 4 weeks.
Yep.
So if he gets the sure hit nullification on the limit burst,
Watch out.
then yeah, that could change things around a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, I like
But
this.
yeah, so you can see people in the chat talking about the power creep. It's been substantial, like since these next gen units have come out. Like not only are their effects and their kits more, better, but their stats are better. So it's just gotten harder to play the old units. We've talked about it a bunch. I think that the meta that Gumi is developing could be a lot more fun if it wasn't for Sephiroth. Like that was kind of that whole conversation we were talking about. Like, we have a handful of. At one point, it was like 10 units. Sephiroth came in, and then it was like, okay, now we have 4 units or 5 units, and
Right.
it feels like everybody else is trash. And that's kind of where we've been at for a couple of months now.
Yep.
Of course, we've added in a couple of units since then, and it's there's some alleviation to that, but yeah, we're still kind of in the middle of it.
Agreed. But yeah, we'll cut things off here for now. Appreciate everyone here staying around for the tier list, giving us some real-time feedback. Obviously, we'll think about this and sleep on it, but I think this is a good spot overall. We'll look to see if Lilyth actually ends up being C tier or not. She's coming out. Good luck on those of you that are pulling for her. We'll see how quickly you can get her up and up to speed and get some real-time results. But in the meantime, we always appreciate you being here per usual. Comments, critiques, criticisms, all in the comment section below. Thank you for your time hanging out with us tonight. JB, thank you for the time hanging out per usual. Always a highlight of the week, but I think that's all I got.
Yeah, we'll see you guys next time. Have a good night.